Graham Glass, welcome to Listening with Leaders. You are the CEO and founder of a company called Cypher Learning, which can be found at cypherlearning.com. Welcome.
Indeed.
So tell us a little bit about your backstory before we get started into what makes you tick.
Yeah, I grew up in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent. And I
Not
was really,
Kansas.
I was very lucky. I had a great childhood. I went to one of the top 10 schools in the UK called Haberdashers, which, by the way, is still doing great. They keep on winning robotics contests
Wow.
all over the world, which is great. And I do remember being in one of my classes when I was about 17. My math teacher was a PhD in math, which is not usual. And everyone in the course was having a great time. The kids were having a great time. The teacher was having a great time. And I remember thinking, you know what? Being a teacher might actually be a pretty fun job. And that was the first time that that education thing kind of like tickled in my mind. And I kept coming back to it again and again throughout my career. But I'm a computer science guy as well. I was one of those teenage guys programming Sinclair computers.
I got to stop you right there. I learned how to
Yeah,
program in beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code, basic language,
yeah, of course.
1969.
Yeah, I learned BASIC as well. Actually, a great language.
And I learned it from the guy that invented it, John Kemeny. He was the president of Dartmouth College where I was attending college.
Wow, that's interesting. Um,
Anyways,
and so so
you became a computer nerd.
yeah, well, I definitely have a strong technological background as well. So I
Mhm.
did my undergraduate degree in computer science in University of Southampton. Then I was offered a position to work in the PhD program in UT Dallas. So I came all the way to Dallas, Texas. And that's where I got my experience in living in that part of the country. And I really had a great time. And while I was there, I got a call out of the blue from one of the professors saying, "Hey, Graham, would you like to teach computers at UT Dallas?" Which was weird because I had no teaching credentials. I'd never taught anything before. But I thought, yeah, I think it would be good fun. And I think I harkened back to my days, back in the UK. And I remember I was so unprepared. So my first lecture was my entire notes for the lecture was literally written on the back of an envelope. And I was teaching something called Unix and C, which is not an easy thing to teach. And I walked in that day and I absolutely nailed it. It was such an incredible experience. And I still remember I could not go to sleep at night. I would just have this incredible buzz, like that was incredible. And just think, if nobody had asked me to do that, I might never have discovered that aspect of myself. So I ended up doing a lot of teaching all kinds of computer technology. I got a lot of teaching chops as a result of that. I honed my philosophy on how to be an effective educator, but I was making very little money. And then the business part of me is like, this is not really that great for your bank account, Graham. And by good luck, some of the people in my university class work for Texas Instruments. And so the TI guys, and by the way, I used to program the TI calculator, so I've got a little bit of a soft spot for TI anyway. They said, "Hey, Graham, would you like to come and teach the same stuff at TI?" And I'm going to share a little tidbit here because it is fun. So I remember thinking, how much am I going to charge them? Because I was making so little money at UT Dallas. So I thought, I'm going to charge them $3,000 for a week, which I just thought was like outrageous. And they go, okay. It's like, that was too easy. So I had a great time teaching, started teaching incorporation. And then a few months later, they go, well, I said, well, I'm going to have to raise my rates a little bit. How much do you want to charge? $5,000 a week. Okay. It's like, that was too easy. And then I found out my competitors hated me because they were charging $10,000 a week.
Wow.
For teaching this stuff. So I suddenly realized, hey, actually being a professional instructor on hot technology is actually quite a good living. So I actually built an entire company. I started hiring instructors and we were teaching this stuff all over the United States. And that's where I got a lot of my experience in educating in corporations, which is pretty different from teaching at universities.
Right.
But then the technological part is like, you know what? I'm a builder. And teaching the same stuff week after week, month after month is not really doing it for me. And I had a hobby. I was building my own supercomputer in my apartment in Dallas based on some new chips that had just come out. But I thought it would be better if I started another company that was a software company. And so I started a company called the Mind Electric, and we were doing some really cool, innovative stuff in distributed computing. And so I kind of like put the education part to the side, but the computer science part was really good fun. And I was lucky. I sold that company to Web Methods back in the early 2000s. And then I got to the point of, if I'm going to do something next, what do I want to do? And I decided the intersection of those two things, education and high tech, that's where I want to be. And that was the genesis of Cypher Learning.
And what does Cypher Learning do today?
So we have a cloud-hosted learning platform. And a lot of people wonder, what is a learning platform? Well, there are variants of it. But if you're familiar with Blackboard or Moodle or Canvas or Docebo, or these are all companies in various K through 12, higher ed. They don't create content of their own. They provide a software platform that you can log into and build courses. And there's various degrees in sophistication and user experience. So we wanted to build the world's most modern learning platform. And so that's basically, that was our goal. But ultimately, if somebody says, what's Cypher Learning all about? It's about helping people to learn faster. That's it.
Okay, learn faster. And so how, well, I don't want to go too much into the business because I want to learn more about you, but I'm just curious, what are some of the methods you use to help people learn faster?
I'll just give you a couple of examples. So, the modern learner, when they go to a learning platform, they expect a beautiful learner experience. They want the courses to be really dynamic and engaging so that you retain information. And so, you've probably heard of things like gamification, getting points and badges as you go through,
Right.
or adaptive learning, so that it automatically figures out your strengths and weaknesses and adapts accordingly. Those are the kind of things that we allow people to do really easily.
Got it.
But the biggest thing we're in right now is AI. And this is the dawn of a whole new generation of education. And we really want to make it happen there.
Wow. So amazing. So as you think about it today, you've been in this business, what, I think you said for 10 years.
Yeah, longer. It's like 13 or something.
Whatever it is.
It seems like 2 lifetimes.
You've been doing it for a long time. What is it that gets
Yeah.
you excited and gets you up in the morning, to get you motivated to work?
Well, I have to say, I've always had a very strong passion for education. I loved as a kid being educated very well. And then as I grew older, I loved educating other people. And I do remember when I was teaching at UT Dallas, I got really good at teaching Unix and C. I invested a lot of time and energy, and I built up my course notes, and they gradually got thicker and better and more enjoyable. But I do remember thinking back then, it's like, if only there was a way to deliver this material to millions of people, it would be extremely rewarding. Because I felt a little bit sad, honestly, because I knew that I wasn't going to do this for that much longer. And I felt sad. It's like I've got all this concentrated information and it's just going to be lost. And in the end, I actually turned it into a best-selling book. So
I was going to say, it sounded like that was a book that's about to be birthed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, here's just a little side thing. I'm really big into just trying stuff, even though you might fail. And I remember I made it into a book, and I thought, you know what? What have I got to lose? I'm going to send a copy of this book to Prentice Hall, to Addison Wesley, a few others. Why not? So I sent them all out. I was living in my one little apartment in Dallas, Texas. And about a month later, I got an inbound from Prentice Hall that said, this book could be a classic. Every reviewer loves it. Would you like a book contract? So that's just an example where you put yourself out there. There's no guarantee. But if I hadn't have done that, I never would have got that book. And that book, by the way, paid for a fantastic sports car called a Lotus Esprit. But if there had been a platform like the Cypher platform, I could have taken everything that I had known and made it electronically available. And I probably would have made millions of dollars, to be honest with you. But in those days, there was no platform like the
Right.
Cypher platform. So
Right.
writing a book was your best bet.
Right. I'm curious, do you have any of your educational material on your platform?
Not my old material, no. But I've got it in a bookshelf. In my office, I've got a
There you go.
series of books that I had written, so I have good memories.
Good for you.
Uh,
Uh, how many employees does Cyber Learning have?
Cypher Learning,
Cyber-
it's got a little over 100 at this point.
Wow. And are you
Um,
guys are presumably kind of hybrid or remote?
we are fully remote.
Okay.
There's actually an interesting story about the genesis of Cypher Learning. I mentioned that I'm a hands-on technologist as well as a business-minded person. And so in every company that I've done that's a product company, I've always built the first version just on my own, which is a really nice skill to have because you don't have to raise a whole ton of money and build a whole engineering team. So I was just in an apartment in San Francisco with my laptop and I started building the first version, but I thought, well, I really need graphic design because I'm not good at graphic design at all. So I found this excellent person in South Africa. It was recommended by a friend, and she is now still with us, the Cypher Learning. She's doing an amazing job leading up our design team. But it was just, I never really thought about South Africa, but my friend recommended her. And it worked really well. I would leave her some notes in the evening, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, response from her. And then I got to the point where, well, I need to get the system cloud hosted. So I found someone in Alabama who is still with Cypher Learning today and heads up our entire DevOps team. And then I needed some technical support, and I found someone in Romania who is still with Cypher Learning today. And so it wasn't like some master plan, but I do remember thinking hiring the best people wherever they are is actually a really nice way to build a company. So, and that's how we've continued. So our CMO is in Florida. I'm here in California. Our CRO is in Florida. Our VP of engineering is in Dallas. We've got people in South Africa. But I love the energy that comes from having that global organization.
Whereabouts are you in California?
I'm in a place called Marin County,
Oh, the few,
which
the
is
proud, and the
across the
Marin.
Golden Gate Bridge.
The few, the proud, the Marin.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I definitely.
I've been there many times. My mother-in-law lives on Nob Hill in San Francisco.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
live down just south of Yosemite National Park, or watching the weather come in.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. We've been watching the same thing.
Yeah. So what is it, as you look back on this really interesting career you have, what do you think that it is unique about you that you bring to the table that's made this whole enterprise so successful?
That's an interesting question. I would say I'm quite a rare combination of deep personal expertise in education and deep high-tech experience, especially in new areas like AI. It's like you can build a company with different expertise that all blended. It doesn't have to be all in one person, but the fact that it is all in one person with me is quite rare. And a lot of people, as their business grows, someone like myself would, gradually fade away in terms of my technology. But I'm still a hands-on person. I still write a lot of the AI code, but I've surrounded myself with really excellent C team who handle the business side. So, I basically said, this is a vision for the company. We want to allow people to learn faster. And from that, with that vision, there's a lot of business things that happen, which I'm not an expert in. I've never claimed to be an expert in, but I do have, decent ideas that I throw into the pot. And so I think that's a relatively rare combination.
Yeah, that is unusual. How AI is relatively new. I mean, at least in the public eye, ChatGPT's been out a little bit more than a year now.
Yeah.
How do you get into learning about coding AI, which seems to me to be a very different type of skill than other kinds of coding?
So this is part of the rare combination. So even when I was a kid, I loved anything to do with like intelligent machines.
Mm-hmm.
So Star Trek had the Star Trek computer. There was a really good English sci-fi series called Blake's 7. And the main ship computer was this massive monolithic thing called Zen, which would talk in this really deep voice. And I loved Zen. I thought, oh, if only there was a way I could have my own kind of AI. But then there was one and I know it sounds like just a story I tell, but it's actually true. So there was one episode in Blake 7 where they find out that all of these different empires are all rushing to this one planet to try and steal the most valuable thing in the galaxy. But they never tell you what that thing is. And towards the end of the episode, Blake and his crew manage to get there before anybody else does. And they walk into this room, and in the room, there's this tiny little box. It's like 1 foot square. And they go, what's going on? We thought there was going to be diamonds or, you know. And they turn this thing on with this little switch, and it wakes up in a squeaky voice, and it says, "My name's Aurak," which happens to be short for Oracle. And they're like, why is this thing the most valuable thing in the galaxy? It's like this tiny little machine. But what you find out is the inventor of Aurak was the inventor of all of the computer chips that were in every single thing in the whole galaxy. And Aurak was the only thing that could tap in and control that entire network.
Oh my goodness.
So it's actually a galactic supercomputer.
Huh.
And I remember as a kid thinking, that's so profound that it's powerful because it harnesses this distributed network. It's not implicitly powerful on its own. And that actually changed the way I thought about technology for the rest of my life. Like I've got patents in distributed computing architecture, and it's because of that insight. So, and then when I was at UT Dallas, I wanted fun projects to teach. So I taught, we're going to build a neural network simulator. And I was one of the founding members of the Dallas Metroplex Institute for Neural Dynamics. And I used to study bat brains at the UT Health Science Center. And so building and looking into AI has been my lifelong constant thing.
You're not a Johnny come lately to the party, obviously.
I've been thinking about AI since I was a kid.
Wow.
But the ChatGPT thing was a catalyst. Like now this stuff is becoming real.
Right.
And so all of the ideas that I've thought about over the years, bam, we're building them really quickly.
Wow. I'm just curious, where do you see all this going?
That's another good, that's a very good question.
That's a long, I mean, there's probably,
yeah, so
you were seeing people, some people are saying it's the end of the universe, and other people are saying this will be the most amazing thing that's ever happened to humankind, and everything in between.
Yeah, it's very hard to predict. So, I've got my own predictions about education. I think it's overall going to be a huge boon because I think everyone can have their own 24/7 personal assistant helping them with everything related to their education. And that's going to be a massive thing. Like you could be somebody, in a really poor country with very few resources, very few teachers, very few schools, but for an internet connection, now you can get and it's not just like Google, it's not just finding stuff, it'll actually teach you.
Right.
So that's one thing. I think the bigger picture, a lot of it is in our hands. I'll share something with you, which is a little bit controversial, but I've watched a lot of videos about AI. And one of the most profound things, but I have to admit slightly disturbing, is they were asking someone about AI and they go, a lot of people put AI or AGI, artificial general intelligence, in the bucket of a tool. And they look at it like it's a calculator or it's the internet or something. This person said that's a categorization error. The way to think about AGI is it's a new kind of life. And when you put it in that bucket, it changes the way that you think about how this stuff could potentially unfold. And I do tend to agree with that. It's not there yet, but I think it's quite inevitable. And I think there's lots of different outcomes. Like I'm a huge fan of Demis Hassabis, who's the head of Google AI. And he and I are both fans of this book series called The Culture Series by an English author called Ian Banks. And in this series, which is like probably the best outcome for humanity, is humans actually do build these AI super AGIs way beyond humans, but they have a symbiotic partnership. So humans accept the fact that these things are much smarter, but they also get rides around the galaxy with them and they use them to do their own thing. It's almost like they live two different lives, but there's a symbiotic relationship. So AGIs could help us to solve fusion, increase longevity, cure diseases. They could do all these wonderful things. On the flip side, though, if humans decide we're going to try and destroy AGI, then if you believe that it is really a kind of life form, then it's going to fight back. So you need to be quite careful about how we process this evolution of digital intelligence.
That, I didn't expect the conversation to go this way, but that gets me into something that is really interesting. And I don't know if you know anything about my background. I'm a lawyer turned peacemaker.
I do.
And today I teach people how to listen to emotions, because after all the research and experience, neuroscience points to one very important thing, and that is humans are not rational, they're emotional. And every decision we make is an emotional decision. And I'm very interested in emotional behavior, because that's what we all engage in, emotional behavior and emotional decision making, and how AGI is going to differ, because emotions are biological and organic. And I'm really wondering whether or not you can possibly build in emotions into a machine, because the what makes us human is our emotions.
I certainly can answer your question. And I'm going to start by, you probably have heard of something called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Oh yeah, CBT, of course.
Yeah, and I've done CBT before, and it was fantastic. And one of the core beliefs about CBT is that your emotions are a result of a form of cognitive processing. In other words, I mean, there are some people that have massive chemical disturbances and probably feel an emotion without it having any.
That's right. Emotions are constructed. It's a cognitive construct. We learn emotions. We're not born with them.
Yeah. And so part of CBT is, if you're feeling, let's just say you're feeling really anxious about something. Okay, so your brain is processing, it has a series of beliefs that result in this emotion. But if you look at yourself and you go, I don't like feeling this emotion, how am I going to deal with it? Then CBT is examine all of your beliefs and challenge them and see if one of your beliefs is leading to that emotion, and see if you can override it. And so a lot of CBT is, don't get into doomerism. Like, okay, let's just say that you did get fired from your job. Would you really lose everything? Well, yeah, maybe not. Would you be able to find another job? Yeah, I probably would. And then by changing those beliefs, you end up with a different emotion.
Right. Exactly.
So the way I view emotions is that they are a aggregating signal of a whole lot of things that are going on in your mind. So think about the emotion of frustration. Frustration is an abstract thing. You can be frustrated by 1,000 different things, but ultimately it's because you have a goal and you're not getting to the goal, and time is ticking by. But having that emotional signal is really important, because then you express it. Like, you can tell someone's emotion, which then allows people to help you, or
Right. We call this emotional categorization. It's the ability to take affective experience, turn it into a cognitive construct that allows it to concretize the affective experience into consciousness, which allows us to be aware of it, to name it, to draw inferences from it, to act on it, and also to communicate it to other people. And
exactly.
Humans are the only ones that can do this. No other species can do this.
And so the thing is that emotional signals are very, very important for cognitive function, because if you're feeling frustrated, then you can do something about it. But if you don't have a signal and it's just completely distributed, there's no signal, it's really hard for parts of your mind to know what's going on. But my feeling is that AGIs will have to have emotion. I take it like, and we'll distance ourselves from the experience, because nobody really knows whether something experiences something or not. I don't even know whether you experience something. I infer that you do, because I do, and we're both humans. But putting that part aside, I think an effective AGI will need to have this concept of signals that mean certain things. Like, a signal of frustration is really important for any intelligence to reach a goal. And being happy is really useful, because, hey, that was a reward. I did something good. I can do that more of it in the future.
So I'm curious about how we're going to substitute the whole endocrine neurotransmitter neuromodulator system that provides all of this stuff. For example, dopamine for happiness, cortisol for frustration, all that. How does I wonder how that all gets?
Well, so we are a biological organism, so we use chemicals for our signals.
Correct.
And they're diffuse chemicals, which is really important. So your nerves connect one-on-one or one-to-many for very precise cognitive processing, but signals need to diffuse. So they operate in different time frames and different scopes. And I think that AGIs will have to have the same kind of mechanism, but they're not going to use chemicals.
Right, something else.
So in the world of computers, for example, there is the concept of a bus. A bus is like a series of signals that various parts of a system can tap into and detect and send each other messages. So while there will be specific processing occurring in fine grain, there will also have to be some form of diffuse communication, but it's not going to be a chemical. It's going to be a digital signal.
Wow.
So you could say 1 means frustrated, 2 means happy, and
it.
there might be 50 of those signals.
Well, this will be really interesting to see where this all goes. Well, we kind of you got me sucked in here.
That was really good fun, though. I don't know if anyone learned anything about me, but
Yeah,
hopefully they learned something about AI and other things.
yeah. You got me going here, man.
Let's keep going. I'm fine.
I'm curious about, this show's called Listening with Leaders because what I've learned in my work is that when you listen another person into existence by listening to and reflecting and validating their emotions, you literally calm the brain down. The scanning images show that when you engage in this process of affect labeling, that the emotional centers of the brain are inhibited and the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex are activated. And that has an immediate effect of calming people down when they're angry or upset. And it has the effect of creating loyalty, trust, and intimacy when people aren't upset, but you're just really validating and listening to people.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, in your work, both on the business side and the computing side, how important has listening been in terms of the development, your personal development, and also the development of your company?
Well, it's very important. I mean, I think lots of people have different opinions about things all the time. And that doesn't mean their opinions are right. But if they have a feeling like, hey, I've got a really good idea, but no one's listening to me, that's just frustrating. And I would feel frustrated as well.
Right.
So everyone who knows me knows that when it comes to business or technology, I'm pretty much egoless. I literally don't care where ideas come from. And in fact, I actually love it when other people have these much better ideas than me, because I feel like I've got a great team and we're working together really effectively.
Yeah, it makes you really happy.
Yeah. And especially in the world of engineering, there's nothing worse than some like egotistical guy in charge of stuff who's like forcing bad ideas down everyone's throat. It's a total drag. So I definitely think that you want to get all the best ideas. You want to listen to people. People want to know that if they have a good idea, there's an opportunity for them to share it. But I will mention aside, I've got 2 young kids. And my youngest kid, believe it or not, is 3 years old.
Wow.
And my wife and I, we have different parenting styles. But I found that my parenting style works really well with my 3-year-old. So my 3-year-old will be crying because of some particular thing. And I just say, Truman, tell daddy why are you sad right now? Because mommy won't do blah, 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 blah. Okay. Do you know why mommy doesn't want you to do that? No. Okay, here's the reason. And I actually tell him the reason for this thing. And I found that when I just talk and especially asking questions with kids, if it's just one way between the parent, but immediately you engage them, you ask them a question, their brain now, like the part that was crying, is like now being sucked into, let me answer that question. And then when everything calms down and you're just talking backwards and forwards and they realize, hey, this actually makes sense. It's not a punishment. It's actually grounded in reason. Right. It usually works great.
The learning process. The other thing you can try is when Truman's crying is just validate his emotions for a minute or two and then do exactly what you're talking about. Truman, you're really sad, you're really unhappy, you're frustrated.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just label his emotions and then
but it does. I mean, my wife is usually quite surprised because she doesn't think that a 3-year-old
can
engage in that kind of stuff, but they can totally. It's fantastic to watch.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Well, one more question, I'll let you go, Graham. What is one thing about yourself that we would never know about unless you revealed it to us?
I used to sing opera at the Royal Opera House in the United Kingdom.
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah, so I've always loved singing ever since I was a little kid. But my school haberdashers was really lucky because it was a feeder school for the for Covent Garden with the Royal Opera House, because we were based in Elstree and it was quite close to London.
Mhm.
So anytime they had a performance of something like A Midsummer Night's Dream, which has fairies in it, or Carmen, which has street urchins, they would come to our school and say, "Hey, we'll take the top 15 boys," and you know we were all like 13 or between 12 and 14.
Right.
We'll take the best singers, and we so it would be really good fun. Like we'd perform at night at the Royal Opera House, and then come back by minibus, and then the next day you're just back to
Cool.
math
How
and English again.
is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Graham. It has been a real joy talking to you.
Oh, likewise, Doug. I had a great time chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.